Thank you very much, Chairman. I fully agree with your opening statement, Chairman. Very clear, and I suppose it clearly outlines the position of Irish dairy farmers and I suppose Irish agriculture at this present time. I'd like to welcome the witnesses here as well today. Look, just a few things you said is not a defeatist report. I hope I'm quoting it correctly. You said Ireland can do more, and you're open on how to make progress. Irish farmers have been trying to do their best, and I think there needs to be an understanding right across the border that is the case. They have low emission slurries, they have protected urea they're working on, clover, low protein rations. These are all things that are just coming in place now, and in time will yield progress in the matter. I was at one farm in Farnans, and I've mentioned it quite often recently in Cork, and I've been told by one of the agricultural groups in our country that they were at a farm in Barryrow last Monday, and if this farmer, if it's to go ahead, what the cuts are to go ahead in relation to nitrates, this farmer is going to go from 80 cows to 53 cows. You may say it's not a culling in cows, but if you restrict their farming practice because of what you're pointing out as being, we'll say, contaminating the waters, this is where it's going to end up for these farmers. These farmers are going to be wiped out one by one. There's no, the man in Fernandez said he, no matter what he's done, he can do no better than what he's doing right now. He's doing it meticulously perfect. The man in Barryrow is doing his work as meticulously perfect, as good as they can do. But they can't go from 80 cows to 53. They can't go from 79 to 60. It's not going to work. And the only winner in this is the Brazilians. They'll do all, they'll grow and grow while we wipe ourselves out, bit by bit. And at the same time, what kills me is and I wish to take the 3 tomorrow for the weekend for a lovely spin down to West Cork. And I can take you into where there's raw sewage going from each village as we speak into the tide, into every river, into everywhere. I can take you around and show it to you. I'm working on one of those. I was an advisor down there 25 years ago. Appreciate that.
I know it down to Ring and all that area.
And Goleen and places like that. Yeah. So I'm on the Community Council of Goleen since 1999. We're doing our best to provide a sewage system for Goleen. It hasn't happened since 1999. There's raw sewage pumping into the tide. And he chased the poor farmer. I was at a public meeting in Shannonvale in Clonakilty recently. They have raw sewage bursting out over the ground, pouring its way down into the reservoir, into the river, into the waters of Clonakilty, and no one gives a damn. But the poor farmer, he'll be chased to an inch of his life. Every time there's anyone gets up beside it, it's the farmer, it's the farmer. He's the only one, he's the only culprit for all the problems that we have in our water, which is actually our own country has turned its back on issues of sewage that needs to be treated and sewage plants that need to be built, and I think it's the biggest culprit as to the contamination of our waters. So I would, plead that we, fight on, because Irish agriculture is under immense pressure. And the one word that stood out when I was at the farm in Farnans was that the farmer said, we're treated like environmental terrorists, and we're not. And that's a sad fact today, and it's coming very much from the floor of our own Parliament, that it's continuously, if there's anything to be pointed at, an environmental issue is pointed at the farmer. And to be quite honest with you, they're doing very good, and they're coming on. Obviously, there is issues, there's no point in saying different, but certainly they must be given some slack as they're working on areas that will create big improvements down the road. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
So just to kind of deal with a couple of questions there, fundamentally I concur. There's no doubt about it that farmers, there's an element of fatigue in terms of that criticism that I certainly don't want to or add to. But equally so, I have to be direct and honest with farmers in terms of the changing environment and the need that if the derogation is to be secured in 2025, and that is principally a matter for government in terms of that application, that we are in the best possible position in terms of that discussion. And that's what we just have to be conscious of. Whilst everybody is criticising the 250 to 220, indeed in our engagement with the Commission, they have opted several, you need to be looking at this from 170 to 220 and not the other way around. In terms of just so that there's no misunderstanding, so farmers are adopting new technologies, okay? Some impact on climate, some impact in terms of water. The issue of protecting urea is solely a matter from a climate perspective, not from a water quality. It doesn't reduce the overall load in terms of nutrient, okay? Just to be very clear on that. Less equipment similarly, farmers have really adopted it. I don't have the figure, but I think my most recent figures were sometime around 5,000 farmers have adopted it, but it's principally around ammonia. So you're effectively reducing ammonia through the use of low emission slurry spreading. You're also, because of its availability to use it and then graze quite quickly afterwards, displacing chemical fertilizer. So the overall usage through low emission slurry equipment is valuable in terms of displacing chemical, which would have an impact on water, but not directly out of itself. I suppose you just have to look at the map though, Deputy Collins, on 6 in terms of meat nitrates concentration in groundwater, and notwithstanding, and I'm not going to here to challenge in terms of your facts about the sewage, and I think Mr. Flynn may attest to that, but if you look at all those nitrates concentrations in groundwater, they're predominantly inland, not subject to effectively those wastewater issues that you talk about, and that's very hard to get away from it being predominantly, from a nitrate point of view, being agriculturally driven. If it's phosphorus, however, there are multiple pressures which include urban wastewater, septic tanks and agriculture. It's a very much different, I suppose, water pressure arising in that, but nitrate in groundwater is predominantly agriculture. That's always been the, I suppose, science associated with that.
I might come in on that too, if that's okay, Chair. Just in terms of the urban wastewater side of things, I think, look, in fairness, Deputy, to the EPA, they produce reports on urban wastewater, on septic tanks, on the nitrates and phosphorus report that they've produced recently, water quality generally. And they've never shied away from the fact that there's multiple pressures across all sides, including wastewater. But the government is putting a huge amount of investment into wastewater and improving wastewater treatment in terms of raw sewage. There are areas that have been identified by the EPA. There are projects underway by Irish Water, Uisce Éireann, for all of those areas. And by the end of 2025, all 32/2 should be dealt with in those areas that have been identified in the EPA reports. Similarly, I guess for urban wastewater, there's two aspects of it. There's directive compliance in terms of the actual quality of the treatment at each treatment plant, and then there's pressures that wastewater, irrespective of its performance, is having on water quality itself. DPA have identified 208 water bodies that have wastewater as a significant pressure. So I think they are identifying where that wastewater issues are happening. They've identified agriculture as 1,000, as I'd mentioned earlier. Okay. Thanks, Gaelic.
Yeah, and thank you very much. But you know, I sincerely hope you're right. At 2025, these changes will be made. But some of them are going on since 1999, yep. And they're adding to your reports as they come out. And sometimes I worry: are they getting? Is the water being muddied slightly, and the farmers being dragged into that fingers are being pointed at them? And would you agree with me that the biggest polluters are the state due to outdated sewage plants in towns and villages?
Well, like I say, in the EPA reports, water quality reports that look at water bodies and look at what's causing the pressure on water status in those, the top one was agriculture, primarily agricultural nutrients, then hydromorphology, which is the shape and flow of the rivers, then I think it was forestry, and urban wastewater was fourth. I guess one of the issues is that many of those other areas are either stable or improving. So the number of water bodies is getting less, whereas that is not the case in agriculture at the moment. So that's the data that the EPA has given us.
Okay. Deputy Conor.